So, Cheryl Bates Harris, you are an expert on this issue, on disability law and disability rights. Help us understand, how is it legal that people with disabilities can be paid less than the federal minimum wage that applies to everyone else?
Well, it goes back to a post-war piece of legislation where men were primarily the wage earners and we had primarily a manufacturing economy. So as veterans returned from war with injuries that would limit their ability to work in a manufacturing society, the 14C provision was put into place to allow men the dignity to continue working, even if they were not, quote unquote, as productive as others. So that's how it started. Unfortunately, it was not until we deinstitutionalized children and they needed a place to go during the day that people really realized that this was a loophole that would allow them to pay people less than minimum wage if they brought work in for those individuals to do.
And one of the pieces of history that the film explores is really the rise of what are often called sheltered workshops. Jordan, what are sheltered workshops, and tell us a little bit of how they came into place?
Well, that's a question I asked a lot over the last year, and I got a lot of different answers about how you define a sheltered workshop. There's no dictionary definition of it. And the sheltered workshops are not even the whole story. There are places that are not workshops where people go that can be paid sub-minimum wage. There are other types of work that make use of this. But a sheltered workshop is the most famous example. And essentially what that is picture a factory down a road that you don't normally drive down, that people with disabilities go for, as Cheryl says, for a period of time during the day. The idea is that they will go there, they'll be able to work on contracts that get brought in from the outside. It's usually manufacturing, shredding papers, sorting parts, things like that. And then the idea is that people will go there, and this will give them an opportunity to earn a little bit of money, get some jobs training skills, get some social skills, and then over a period of time, then be able to transition out to some kind of community employment. That does happen occasionally, and sometimes it happens sometimes it happens over a very, very long period of time. There's a gentleman in the film from Mississippi who had been at a workshop for 15 years. This gentleman named Tillman Mitchell from Vicksburg. And at the end of those 15 years, he was finally placed in a community job. They only started looking for him in that last year of that 15 years. And the job they found for him was he's a houseman at a La Quinta Inn. And I met Tillman. There's no question in my mind it would not take 15 years for him to learn how to wipe down a vending area or a vacuum a floor. I just don't believe that. And that seems to be the pattern that we found. And Cheryl can talk more about this because she did the investigations over time at NDRN that looked at a lot of these examples of people being in workshops for 10, 20, 30 years. That doesn't sound like a training program to me.
Cheryl, you argue in the film that sheltered workshops started for the right reason, but that they have since become an outdated model of segregation. What did you mean by that? And tell us a little bit more about these workshops and the investigations that NDRN has done.
Well, the workshops originally started, I'm going to say, the late 50s, 60s, and certainly they flourished in the 70s. And the thought then was we were just starting to educate children in public schools. And so these were kids that parents had kept out of institutions that needed a place to go during the day. So when somebody thought about, well, let's try to teach them some job skills and think about employment, that's when the 14C was discovered. And what's happened, unfortunately, is businesses contract work to the sheltered workshops, and the businesses make good money off of these contracts. So they have an incentive to keep people there in order to get the production work done. And so instead of being a train and place model, individuals it's a road to nowhere. People end up in the sheltered workshops. Most people will either die or retired from sheltered workshops.
And Jordan mentioned work that might involve wiping down countertops, but what types of work are people frequently doing in these workshops? I know it can range.
Very tedious, repetitive, and low-skilled work. Assembly, counting out nuts and bolts for like the furniture that you put together that you buy from IKEA. Shredding newspapers is very common. Stringing linoleum tiles together. Putting product samples together. And the most unfortunate part is that the work that comes in, everybody has to do it. People don't get to choose the kinds of jobs they do, nor do they get to, nor are they matched with their skills and abilities. And that's consequently the reason of the subminimum wage. People don't have dexterity skills for a lot of these. People don't have any interest in it. They get bored. It's just, not a good job match, and they're stuck.
And that is definitely a theme that recurs throughout the film. Let's play a little bit of tape from one worker describing how the work he was assigned to do didn't match at all with his skills or abilities.
My name is LaRon Jackson. Sometimes I think they match the people up with the wrong task because they don't really want to take the time to match them to what they can do. Like when I was in the shelter workshop, they had me bending over, putting clothes in the barrel. I had CP, so I couldn't bend over and then get myself back up. It took me a while to get myself back up. I had to ask somebody to get me up so I can reposition myself and then pick up some clothing and then bend back down to put it in the barrel. And after I got that check of $2.50 for working in a hot workshop with hot big fans, I said I quit. I can go find me something else to do.
So in addition to the mismatch of work that people can be assigned to do, people also are paid very little. And obviously that's the thrust of this film, that the title of the film is Bottom Dollars, which couldn't sum up better what's going on here. But how much do people actually get paid for this work, Jordan?
Well, none of this is really a secret. If you go to the Department of Labor's website, they have a spreadsheet where it actually shows where every single 14C holder is in the entire country. And so what we did is we took that and we did a Freedom of Information request. And we looked at several shelter workshops, some of them which appear in the film and others which were just the biggest ones by number of people employed. And we saw some wages that were above minimum wage in the $9 area. We saw some that were more around the federal minimum wage. But then there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people being paid $5 an hour, $3 an hour, $2 an hour, 50 cents an hour down to 2 cents an hour, 3 cents an hour.
2 cents an hour.
2 cents an hour.
And there are people in the film who actually describe after a day of incredibly tedious, as you mentioned, Cheryl, and also in some cases somewhat grueling work because of the mismatch with their abilities or skills, receiving their paycheck and it ends up being like $2.50 or $5 for an entire pay period. Yeah,
and there's a gentleman we ran into named LaRon Jackson, the clip we just played, and he worked in a sheltered workshop, and he was completely mismatched. They had him gathering up clothes and putting it in the barrel, and then they would basically weigh the barrel at the end of the day and then pay him based on that. And he has cerebral palsy. He doesn't have great dexterity. He describes it pretty well in the film, how kind of ridiculous it was that he was assigned this job. And what I think about when I think about LaRon is that he is now working at Disability Rights Mississippi. He is now an advocate who goes into sheltered workshops to help people get out. He's has his undergrad degree and he's planning to go to law school. So we had a guy who will probably go to law school, get an advanced degree, and become a lawyer one day. And we thought it would be a good idea to put him in the sheltered workshop and assign him to sort clothing. That doesn't strike me as starting with high expectations for someone or starting with what someone's dreams are, what they want to do.